There's no real rule for tinning paints. It all depends on the paint itself. Some paints are thicker, some are thinner, but one thing counts for all paints and all brands. Never use paint straight out of the bottle. It's almost always way too thick. To tin paint, just put some on your palette. If you're using paint pots like these, you can just use your brush to put some paint on your palette before tinning it. I have a separate brush for this, just to extend the lifetime of my good brushes, because I don't want to dip a good brush all the way in a pot or even use it for tinning, because then there will be way too much paint on the brush and it will be hard to clean afterwards. So using this brush, you have two ways to put some water in here. Now the preferred way of mine is using this dropper bottle, empty dropper bottle filled with distilled water. I usually make a separate pool of this water on my palette, and then I can use my brush to draw water from this pool into the paint. Another option you have, just use some water from your rinsing pot. Now for this pool of paint, which is maybe 2 or 3 drops of paint, for a base coat, just enough to put this brush, this is a number 1 brush, all the way into the water and mixing this with the paint. So that's about the ratio I use for base coating. So this is now slightly thinned, but it's important, as you can see, it doesn't really have the thick characteristics of the paint as it's coming straight out of the bottle. So to show you, this drop of paint is the paint that comes right out of the bottle. So as you can see, it's a bit gooey, a bit sticky. You can make thick pools with it. Really, when it's on the brush, it's really a big drop of paint there on the front. With a slightly thin paint, this is different. It goes on the brush much smoother, and also the layer you put down on your palette is much thinner. That's also something we want to use on our model. Okay, so for shading and highlighting, it just all comes down to the quality level you want to achieve. So if you want to use paint for shading or highlighting, it has to be thinned more than this. And yeah, this is, if you really want to have a guideline, you can count the number of brush dips. So this is a pool with, let's say, 2 brushes full of paint. And to thin this, I think I'm going to add 1 full brush tip of water. Now an important way to check the consistency of your paint is just put some paint on your fingernail, like this. And that's very easy to, this way you can check the transparency of the paint as it's on your fingernail. So for a rather quick shading, this consistency is okay, but if you want to go better quality, then you have to add more water than this. So to summarize, never use paint straight out of the bottle. Use distilled water to thin your paints, or draw some water from the rinsing pot. And if you can, use an old brush to do the mixing. Also for the base coat, just add a little bit of water to the mix to make the paint thinner. And then for shading and highlighting, if you do layering, add even more water. About 1 part of paint and 1 part of water is a good average.